Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is James and you're watching Wonderful World. And with me today is my ball python Jerry. And that's because in today's video, we're going to talk about a common challenge that many ball python owners face, and that is refusing food. Ball pythons are known for being finicky eaters and sometimes refusing food. And this can be a worrying and frustrating thing. And if you have a ball python and this is your first time dealing with that, then you should know that it won't be your last. That's just something that comes along with owning a ball python. Now, you may hear people say that ball pythons refusing food is a normal thing, and that's just how ball pythons are. But my advice would be not to listen to that. There are a number of reasons why a ball python might be refusing food. And the most important thing is to figure out what that reason might be and fix it before you decide that it's just being a ball python. Of course, anyone who's raised a ball python knows that at some point in time your ball python might go off food, which might last for a week or several weeks or even months. And sometimes it's a natural thing for a ball python to do. Sometimes it's a seasonal thing. Ball pythons can go off food during the winter or when they're ready to breed. But sometimes when a ball python goes off of food, it's because it's feeling stressed. And that stress is usually due to something being off in the husbandry or in the setup of its enclosure. So if your ball python isn't eating, the first thing you need to do is analyze every aspect of your snake's husbandry and enclosure setup to see if anything might be off or missing or needs improvement. Take advantage of this time to review the details of ball python husbandry and check those details against what you're providing for your snake. Now, this video is not a ball python care guide, but I have a previous video for that. And if you need that, I'll put a link to that in the corner. So double check the temperatures in the enclosure and the humidity. Make sure the enclosure is large enough and provides plenty of places to hide so your snake feels secure. And make sure there are plenty of hides in the enclosure and that the hides you're using are not too large or too small. Jerry here is almost 2 years old and he's gone on feeding strikes twice in his life. One time for 7 weeks and the other time for 9 weeks. And after his second feeding strike, I decided I would change the way I provided heat for him. So I did away with the heat mats and I went to using a deep heat projector. Now, I don't know if it's a correlation or not, but he went off the feeding strike pretty soon after I added the deep heat projector. And he's not gone on a feeding strike ever since that time. You may want to also check the level of humidity in the enclosure and use an accurate tool to measure that. I miss Jerry's enclosure once every morning and sometimes a little bit extra when he's in shed. And since ball pythons do need a little bit more humidity, I think that a bioactive setup with bioactive substrate is really good for them. The plants and the bioactive substrate really help to hold in humidity. Another question you might want to ask yourself is, does your snake feel safe and secure? If you're using a glass terrarium, then you might cover the sides and the back of the terrarium with black window film. And ball pythons like tight spaces for their hides, so finding the right size hide can be a little bit tricky. They want to feel like they're in a tight space, so you need to find the right size hide without it being too small. Now, there are things that you can do to help encourage your snake to eat. If you've just gotten a new ball python, and that means it's probably a baby, the first thing you need to do is introduce it to its enclosure, which you've set up ahead of time, and just leave it alone for a week or more. Don't feed it or handle it until it's had time to settle in and feel comfortable in its new surroundings. This is a stressful time for a snake, and if a snake is stressed, then that might be the reason that it's not eating. Another tip is don't feed your snake in a separate feeding bin. There's no reason to do that, and all that does is cause your snake more stress, which in turn will make more reasons for it not to eat. When you're preparing the frozen mice or rats, put them in a place to thaw, maybe on the top of the tank or somewhere where as they thaw, the scent will permeate their enclosure, and they will pick up on that scent and hopefully get excited about eating. What I do is leave the rats out to thaw, and then I put them under a heat lamp or use a hair dryer to heat them up to the right temperature. And the temperature for a live, healthy rat or mouse is right around 97 degrees. And I use an infrared temperature gun to check the temperature of the rodent before I feed it to Jerry. Some people like to thaw their rats out in warm water, but I don't do that. I feel like the water can wash off the scent of the rat. And so if you do thaw it in water, you might want to use a hair dryer to dry the rat off before offering it to your snake. When you feed your snake, make sure that the room is quiet and there's no dogs or children running around making noise. There's no television or loud music playing. You maybe can even dim the lights. And as you prepare to feed your snake, just move slowly and be calm. Any kind of fast and jerky movements can scare your snake, and that will make them again not want to eat. So when you're feeding your snake, do as little as possible as you can to not disturb your snake. Don't move the hide, don't move things around in the enclosure, don't talk to someone else while you're feeding your snake, and just be quiet and calm. Now, if your snake is not immediately striking at the food, that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't eat it. Just leave the mouse or rat sitting in front of the hide and turn out the lights and leave the room for a while. A few months ago, Jerry went for about 3 weeks in a row where he wasn't striking at his food. And I just left the rat sitting in front of his hide and left the room. And a half hour later, he had come out and eaten the rat. I recommend sticking to a regular feeding schedule. Snakes, and especially ball pythons, are creatures of habit, and they learn those schedules, and they come to expect it. So, for example, my feeding schedule is that Saturday is snake feeding day. And it may be that your snake is going to eat better at a different time of day. I find that Jerry eats best when I feed him in the early evening at about 5 or 6 o'clock. So if your snake isn't eating, you might try feeding him either earlier or later in the evening. As much as it's frustrating and it causes you to worry about your snake, an adult python can go for a long time without eating, without losing any weight or body condition. Now, it can be a little bit more serious for a hatchling snake that needs to eat more often and needs to be growing. So if you notice that your snake has lost any significant amount of weight, then that might be a time that you need to consult with a vet. And a vet can help you know what steps to take next if it comes down to assist feeding, or to know if there is some other health problem that might be causing your snake not to eat. Now, I said earlier, don't listen to people when they say that's just how ball pythons are, but ball pythons go off of food all of the time. And 99.9% times they're just fine and they're just being a ball python. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's best to rule out any other reasons that your snake might be not eating, so that you can fix that problem if there is a problem. So this is a complex topic, and if I've left anything out, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and that will really help other people who might be watching this video. And I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.